Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to share with you how I make whole wheat sourdough loaves right here at home with freshly milled flour. And I hope to really simplify the process for you because I want you to get on board with it, and it's just a little bit different than the normal sourdough way. So jump in with me and let's get started. Now, just as with all sourdough, you want to start by feeding your sourdough starter. I usually take about 1 tablespoon of sourdough starter, feed it 1 cup of flour, and a 3/4 cup of water. I do it like that because in the end, I'm trying to achieve a sourdough starter that is the same consistency as the dough would be when I mix the bread. And so that way, when I add the sourdough starter to my bread mix, I'm not adding just a pure liquid, but more of a doughy texture to a dough. And because of the bread book that I learned from, I've just always kind of maintained that. So I hope it makes sense. Now, I said I would keep this simple, but you gotta ask, do you feed your sourdough starter with whole wheat flour? I think yes. It makes sense to me that we want to be using whole wheat flour for all things in life. But I will say that you have to keep an eye on it. As with all sourdough, it's a science, and temperature matters and time matters. And so you gotta look at what is happening right in front of you and make decisions accordingly. And so the rules usually with the sourdough starter is you want it to double in size, be bubbly, and have a kind of fragrant smell. And so you can feed it with whole wheat flour, but just watch for when it has doubled in size, is bubbly, and has a fragrant smell. And you will notice, just like I did, that the window in which you can use your sourdough starter just is much smaller. And so I do keep an elastic and I check when it is, double in size, and then don't keep it outside of the fridge for too much longer, because based on what I've researched, the acidity in whole wheat flour can outrun your sourdough starter bacteria or whatever it is. And so it'll just kind of kill it after some time. So just be really responsible with it because it does respond differently to whole wheat flour than it does to just plain flat white flour. Next, I'm going to mix the loaf, and I'm going to leave a recipe in the description box below so that you can follow the direct measurements if you want to. And if you do end up making this bread, please would you leave it some reviews and give it a rating so that other people know that they can also trust this recipe. That would really help me and others out. So I'm starting by mixing my flour and my water together and letting it autolyse. That's a scientific process where something happens between the flour and the water before I add the salt and the sourdough starter. Again, I just learned to bake bread this way, and so I always follow this process. After about 20 minutes, I'm gonna add in my sourdough starter and my salt, mix that together, and you'll see that it feels kind of odd at the beginning. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like how it used to feel when I would just bake with white flour. There's a stiffness in it and it doesn't really mix all that easily. Don't worry. Do an initial mix as best as you can, leave it for 5 minutes and come back, and you'll see something happens with all these ingredients and it just starts mixing much easier. Once you have finished your mixing, the bulk fermentation process begins. This is where the sourdough starter starts eating at those grains and fermenting it in a way where it is easily digestible for your body by the time you eat the bread. And so we want this process to happen. It's really good. The only thing is that for some reason, the whole wheat flour kind of speeds things up in a way, or something happens with the chemistry that here I find it becomes overly moist and loses a lot of its structure really quickly. And so the way that I combat this is by doing my first 4 folds within about a 2 to 4 hour range, and then shaping my loaves and getting them into the fridge to slow down the rest of the fermentation. Because the window just seems to be much shorter than with sourdough and white flour, that it seems better to slow it down at some point and still get a nice rise than to miss the mark and then have flat bread or breads that turn out to be bricks. During this bulk fermentation, what you want to do is apply 3 to 4 fold to the dough, and all that is just grabbing the edge of the dough, pulling it up as far as it'll let you, and folding it over. That's as far as it'll let you without tearing. And so I do that all the way around the dough, sometimes 4 or 5 times to finish the circle. And then I let it rest for 20, 30 minutes and then do it again. So let that happen over a 2 to 4 hour period. Now next I'm going to do a shaping of my loaves. I'm going to gently sort of scrape with floured hands this dough onto a surface, and I am inverting it. So basically what was the top is now going to be the bottom, and the bottom is now going to be the top. And it is on a lightly floured surface so that it doesn't stick. And then I'm going to use my dough scraper to kind of pull the dough slightly outward into a square-ish format, because I want to be getting it in a way where I can fold in the sides and kind of roll the dough in on itself. I forget what this is called, but it's some or other way where you prepare the dough for its shape. I'm not very good at it yet. Maybe I'll post a picture that I saw somewhere with the steps a little bit more clearly if you want to take a screenshot, and then you can follow this picture rather. But basically, yeah, I'm folding in the sides and then rolling the dough in on itself. And then I'm going to let it do the rest of the bulk fermentation and rise in this loaf pan that I've lined with parchment paper in my fridge, which will just slow it right down. It'll still be fermenting, but at a slower pace than it is out here in my kitchen. I just really like the sandwich loaf. I feel like the edges of the tins give a little bit more structure to the dough and the loaf, as opposed to the round ones from the Dutch oven, especially with whole wheat, since we're already kind of at a disadvantage to get a really good rise because the bran is kind of sharp as it mills. I read that the bran cuts some of those gluten structures that would normally build in a white loaf. And so the tin really helps, and I can just create an environment where the moisture can help kind of bake the inside a little better. I gotta say, I haven't really noticed that big of a difference if I don't put the lids on, so maybe this is up for experimentation still, and you can see what works best with or without. I don't even have tins today because I left my tins at church last weekend when I took loaves over, so I'm just going to be baking them without the lids on. Again, try both and see what you prefer. The second thing is the scoring of the bread. For a long time I did not score my breads, and I still got good rises, so I don't know what all that's about. Some people swear by it and you absolutely have to do it. I would say experiment, see if it works better for you with or without. And then even when you do experiment a couple of times, because you might think one time that it did work better, but it might have been because of something else. And so sourdough is lovely that way. We will always be experimenting, I feel, but this is a good work to be doing. Oh, and I almost forgot to say, when I do put those tins on top, I only do it for 30 minutes and then take them off for the last 15 minutes. So once the loaves are done baking, I take them out, remove them from the pan right away, and kind of flip them on their side to help cool down the bottom of the loaf quickly. And let's see how it turned out. I'm gonna wait a little bit so that it cools down, and then I'll cut it and give you a sample of what it looks like on the inside. When is the last time you looked at the ingredient list on your white flour packages? I mean, I can't even believe that people want to eat this stuff anymore. I am just shocked that it's taken away all the good stuff, and then they're adding in, fortifying it with other vitamins, and I just don't see the point of that. And so everybody come to the whole wheat side and mill your grains fresh. Oh yes, why you want to be milling it fresh is because as soon as you mill it, all of these amino acids, oils, vitamins start to evaporate. And so you've got about a 24-hour window to actually use it before it's, released a lot of that into the air and you've lost it. Some people say 48 hours, I've read. Other scientists say it should mix with water within 24 hours to really lock that in. Mill it fresh, use it right away. Best answer. I will just say that we're all getting excited about these big fluffy sourdough loaves with white flour, but I'd rather have my loaf not rise to the heavens and look all wonderful that way, but feed me, than have this beautiful looking loaf that rose really well, but isn't really feeding me much nutrients at all. That's just me. Like seriously, you might think that you're getting fed by sourdough loaves, it's all healthy, but really try eating a whole wheat, freshly milled sourdough loaf and see when you're hungry again. It's amazing how much it fills you up. And that's just what it was intended to do. Actually feed you with nutrition and keep you healthy. What an amazing thing. So let's all get back to the way it was. I really believe that this is so important for all of us to get back to, and I think it can bless you if you do that. So may it go well. Please leave me feedback below if you do try this recipe. I'm also still learning just like all of you, and so if you find some secret tips that really give you a better rise, I would love to know. So please leave them below and follow along for a lot more whole wheat and sourdough recipes coming up. Cheers, bye.